At the beginning of the 19th century, 1/5 of Britain's population lived in towns and cities. Yet only 100 years later, this figure rose to 3/4 of the population. In the span of a century, a largely rural society had become a largely urban one. The impact on people this sudden change of environment had cannot be overstated. Many who'd once lived among hills and fields now lived in cramped and dehumanizing industrial towns and cities. D.H.Lawrence, born in 1885 to an Eastwood mining family, wrote often and deeply about the psychology of the working classes. The Primrose Path, a short story about Daniel Sutton, a taxicab driver struggling to cope with the slow dying of his wife, explores the idea that the places where we live and work can prevent us from becoming openly and honestly human. The concept of a primrose path is Shakespearean. In Hamlet, which is just one example, Ophelia warns her student brother Laertes, who has been lecturing her not to behave improperly while he is away, to "do not, as some ungracious pastors do, show me the steep and thorny way to heaven, whiles like a puffed and reckless libertine, himself the primrose path of dalliance treads, and recks not his own reed." The idea of a steep and thorny way to heaven comes from the Christian concept that the path to heaven is difficult. The path to hell, wide and pleasant and easy. To walk the primrose path is to walk the easy, comfortable path, straight to hell. D.H.Lawrence famously deplored comfort. "Soft and nice and comfortable," he says. "Soft jobs, nice wives, comfortable homes, that is supposed to be England today. And Englishmen are quite startled if you suggest that it might take more to make a real England." The character of Daniel Sutton is comfort personified. He drives a taxicab and can barely sustain his breath when forced to walk. He goes exceedingly pale when he visits the deathbed of his wife, whom he has abandoned for a younger woman. Seeking amelioration from the oppression of medicine bottles, he escapes his taxicab and drives off. Sutton aimed his car like a projectile, staring ahead. He did not want to know, to think, to realise. He wanted to be only the driver of that quick taxi. Sutton's state of deep, enduring unhappiness and anxiety expresses D.H. Lawrence's view of comfort as a plague affecting authenticity. The taxicab and its shell of comfort has dehumanized Sutton. He is a pretender who cannot face the real world. "The more motor cars and omnibuses there are rampaging down the roads," Lawrence said, "the more the country retreats into its own isolation." If a taxicab's false comfort can dehumanize a man, it's difficult to imagine the impact mining and the Industrial Revolution had on rural communities. The opening paragraph of Lawrence's short story, The Daughters of the Vicar, describes the destruction of a hamlet in a way that is little different to the fall of man in the Garden of Eden. The cottages of this tiny hamlet had nestled in peace since their beginning, but when the pits were sunk, blank rows of dwellings started up beside the high roads, and the cottages and the country people were almost obliterated. The characters in the story thereafter express a sinful way of life. Most characters, like the vicar, Mr. Linley, and his eldest daughter, are obsessed with greed and personal gain, while others glare inwards to depart their new and unpalatable world. Yet there is one moment of humanity in the story. The relationship between Mr. Linley's youngest daughter, Miss Louisa, and a local miner, Durant, is born by love. They break the bonds of class and expectation and marry. And perhaps the most important moment in the story occurs almost at nature's insistence. As they went up the hill, the night seemed dense with the unknown. They kept close together, feeling as if the darkness were alive and full of knowledge all around them. "Come tomorrow," she said, "and ask Father." She felt his hand close on hers. Industry and mining may have destroyed the people of Aldercross, But here, Lawrence suggests there is a way to move forwards and live as authentic humans, through nature and what it says to us.